I'm not speaking for the whole black community. I'm just speaking for myself. Yes, I'm going to say it out loud. Yes, I am defending Karmelo Anthony because he's black. I'm defending him because he's black, because you attacked him because he was black. You decided that he was a thug because he was black. You decided that this young man shouldn't have a bond because he was black. You decided that this young man should be charged as an adult because he was black. This young man should get life in prison because he was black. You didn't even know the details. You still don't know the details of the case. So yes, I am defending Karmelo Anthony because he is black, and you are attacking him because he is black. You respect nothing. His father said he didn't think this was a black or white issue. He didn't want it politicized. You turn right around and you politicize it. You make it a black or white issue. And you think Black America is supposed to just sit back and let you find this young man guilty in the court of public opinion before he could even get a fair trial. Now, it don't work like that. It's cause and effect. You attacking him because he's black. I'm defending him because he's black. That's how that works. You still looking for your Trayvon Martin. You still looking to get even. You just have to be the victim. Y'all need to grow up. You need to grow up and have an honest conversation about race relations in America. You need to get honest with yourself. And some of you people probably were allies back in 2020. Some of you people probably were on the internet going, if Black America just educate us on what it's like to be black in America, until something like this happens and the true you come out. So yes, I'm saying the loud part out loud. I'm saying the quiet part out loud. Yes, I am defending Karmelo Anthony because he is black, because you have attacked him because he is black.
A 17-year-old is dead. Another 17-year-old is sitting in a courtroom facing a murder charge. Two families got their lives completely flipped upside down in the time it takes to blink. And instead of letting the court system do what it does and it was built to do, the internet picked teams and started playing tug of war with a homicide case. That's what we're dealing with today. Karmelo Anthony, a track meet in Frisco, Texas, a dispute over a seat under a tent that belonged to another school's team. And Austin Metcalf, a 17-year-old kid, stabbed in the chest, dying in his twin brother's arms. Another ran after the stabbing, got caught and admitted he did it. That's not alleged. He said it himself. The trial is not being televised, and honestly, that's the right call because we watch what a camera in the courtroom does to a high-profile case. It stops being about the facts and starts being about ratings. And the last thing this case needs is more performance. So what I'm going to do is walk through 2 extra clips, break down every argument in plain English, and show you exactly why supporting somebody based on their race instead of the facts is dangerous for everyone, including a community you think you're protecting. This first clip is a man who came out and said it flat, no filter. He is defending Karmelo Anthony because he's black. And he's doing it because, in his words, the other side attacked him because he was black in this clip. And look, I want to be fair here because he's not being sneaky about it. He said the quiet part loud and he owns it. But saying it loud doesn't make it right. And here's why. He turned a murder trial into a scoreboard. His logic is basically your side is pulling this way, so my side has to pull the other way. Whoever pulls harder wins. That's not how justice works. That's not even how common sense works. The courtroom doesn't move based on who shows up louder. He went through a whole list, the bond decision, the adult charges, the quote thug label people put on him online. And he's not totally wrong that those conversations are worth having. Bias in the system is real. The history of black men being treated differently by courts and, some form of history and point in time is real. And none of that is something you just wave off, but those conversations are completely separate from whether Karmelo Anthony actually stabbed Austin Metcalf. And I'm trying to be very objective here, right? I want to be very objective and have an honest, productive conversation. Karmelo Anthony actually stabbed Austin Metcalf in the chest at a track meet. You don't get to mix the two together and use one to cancel out the other. Systemic bias is a policy conversation. what happened in Frisco as a facts conversation. They don't live in the same sentence. Then he went and said something that should have stopped everyone in their tracks because he brought up the father, right? He said the other side disrespected the family, kept politicizing it, kept making it a black and white thing, even after the father said he didn't want that. His own father said publicly he did not want this turned into a racial issue. He did not want it politicized. And the very people who said they were standing up for his son completely ignored what that man asked for when it comes to Karmelo Anthony's father, I'm talking about. You can't claim to support a family while screamrolling the father's actual wishes because they don't fit the narrative you already decided on. That's not support. That's using someone's child for your own argument. The last thing he said was cause and effect, quote unquote. You attacked him because he's black, so I defend him because he's black. And I understand his emotions, but cause and effect is not a legal defense. It doesn't change what the surveillance footage shows. It doesn't change what witnesses said, and it doesn't change the confession. Feelings about how the online right treated this case do not rewrite the physical evidence inside a courtroom. And acting like they do doesn't help Karmelo Anthony. It just makes the whole thing louder and more chaotic while the actual trial proceeds on facts. Okay, family?
File case against Karmelo Anthony in the stabbing death of Austin Metcalf during a Frisco track meet is heading to trial next week. The emotionally charged case shook Collin County, led to protests, threats, and doxing calls against both families and even a judge in the case. Maria Guerrero looks ahead to the trial and how we got here.
Parents rushed to Kirkendall Stadium on a rainy April morning in 2025.
She witnessed some things and we just finished talking to the police.
Not yet realizing the devastating details to come. The victim, 17-year-old Austin Metcalf.
The sad part about it is he died in his brother's arms. They were twins, identical twins.
Fatally stabbed in the chest, prosecutors say, by Karmelo Anthony, also 17 at the time. By all accounts, the two did not know each other. The confrontation reportedly over Anthony, a Centennial student, sitting under Metcalf's Memorial School team tent and told to leave by Metcalf. Things turned physical, according to witnesses, even after Anthony reached inside his bag and threatened, "Touch me and see what happens." Jurors will likely see surveillance video showing only a burst of action at a distance. Anthony running away after the stabbing before being caught and allegedly confessing. They'll likely see the knife covered at the scene with a blue tarp. Mike Howard is Anthony's defense attorney.
The prosecution will not be able to rule out the reasonable doubt that Karmelo Anthony may have acted in self-defense.
And I think in most self-defense cases, the dispute is regarding the reasonableness of the fear.
We asked defense attorney Russell Wilson, not involved in the upcoming murder trial, for insight.
What are the biggest questions that have not yet been answered that could determine the outcome of the trial?
The exact details of what occurred immediately prior to, during, and after the incident.
How is this self-defense?
His $1 million bond significantly lowered. The now 19-year-old faces up to life in prison. His parents went public with concerns for their safety.
I don't know why we're being targeted and discriminated against before a fair trial.
Veteran prosecutor Bill Werski will seek a murder conviction. Judge John Roach not allowing cameras or audio inside.
I'm personally in favor of more open courtrooms because society needs to know what happens in a courtroom.
Maria.
Let me walk you through what actually happened at that track meet. The way you'll explain this is somebody who hasn't followed the case at all because the facts are not complicated once you lay them straight out. Karmelo Anthony went to a track meet at Kirkendall Stadium in Frisco, Texas. At some point during that meet, he sat down under a tent that belonged to a Memorial High School's team. Not his school, not his tent, nothing to do with him. Austin Metcalf, who ran for Memorial, told him to leave. That's it. That was the beginning of this whole thing. Karmelo didn't leave. He stayed. The situation got tense. He reached into his bag and he warned Austin directly, quote, touch me and see what happens, quote unquote. Then he stabbed Austin Metcalf in the chest. Austin died in his twin brother's arms at the stadium. And I want to pause on the tent thing for a second because there are people online who acted like asking someone to get out from under your team's tent was some kind of power move or act of aggression. And that framing needs to die, right? Because track meets are not casual hangouts. Teams have assigned tents. At least from my anecdotal experience, we had our own assigned tent. We sat with our team. We followed where our team went. And the only time you would get up is to start warming up and stretching before you're about to be called up to the line for your race based on the order in which the track meet goes, right? And also based on if you're a sprinter, a long distance runner, and et cetera, et cetera. So teams have assigned tents specifically because athletes keep their gear, their bags, their personal belongings, their equipment under those tents, and stuff gets taken. They also have snacks, right? If it's a long, drawn out day, you may have some snacks, some water, try to get you some protein. From my experience, I had teammates who had beef sticks, just to get a little bit of protein or something in. But if a stranger is sitting under your team's tent and won't leave when you ask, you have every reason in the world to want them gone. You may go to your coach. If your coach isn't on the sideline motivating, your teammate whose race is up, depending on if you have multiple coaches, sometimes you only have one. In my anecdotal experience, I only had one. So we were mature enough as we upheld representing our school because we were a representation at that track meet representing our school and going to a private high school. I also known that we were taught that you represent the school. Even when you're not at school, you represent the school and the values that the school has. It's no different from when you go to a college, right? You represent the college on and off the campus. That's not racial aggression. That's protecting your team's space and the stuff inside it. The quote unquote leave black people alone framing that went around online doesn't survive contact with the actual sequence of events because Karmelo was the one who put himself under a tent he had no business being under, and Karmelo was the one who refused to go when asked, and nobody chased him down, nobody came looking for him. The confrontation started because he stayed somewhere he wasn't supposed to be, and then it escalated it himself. Now, and I want to be objective as possible, just focusing on the facts. A lot of people also leaned hard on the quote unquote, he was a good kid argument. Good student, athlete, graduated, now in college. And I'm not going to dismiss that because I think it's genuinely sad that a young man with real potential made a choice that led to this. But being a good student doesn't make you legally or factually incapable of making a catastrophic decision in a single moment. Good people do terrible things sometimes, and the court doesn't weigh your GPA against the charge, it weighs the evidence. Character witnesses exist in trials for a reason, but they don't override physical evidence, a confession, and surveillance footage. Now, the self-defense claim is the thing the defense is going to lean on the hardest. So let's just get clear on what self-defense actually requires in plain English. You can use force to protect yourself, but the force you use has to match the threat you're facing. If someone pushes you, you can push back. If someone comes at you with a weapon, you can use a weapon based on a definition of that. For example, you may have a weapon for home protection, right? But the force, the threat has to be with the force of them having a weapon as well. What you cannot do, and this is the foundational rule, is respond to a non-deadly threat with deadly force. A push is not a deadly threat, and I'm just trying to keep it simplistic here. A shove does not justify a knife to the chest. That gap between what was done to Karmelo and what Karmelo did in response is exactly where the self-defense argument falls apart. And that's not an opinion. That's the legal standard, okay?
The Karmelo Anthony trial is in June. The 17-year-old who was charged with unaliving Austin Metcalf in Frisco, Texas. And I just want to let y'all know that this is the biggest leave black people alone case that we've seen in years. This case sets precedent because everything about this case was about leaving black people alone. It's unfortunate that somebody lost their life, but this would never have happened if they would have left Karmelo Anthony alone. It don't matter that he was under that tent. It don't matter what he had in his book bag. When they asked him to leave and he refused, if they would have just walked away, this doesn't happen. This does not happen. But we know the entitlement. We can tell you where you can sit, and if you refuse, we can remove you. But you can't. But you can't. And this case says it all. This case says it all. They said so many negative things about this young man. This young man wasn't a thug. This young man wasn't in the streets. This young man wasn't a gang member. This was an above average student, a student athlete. He graduated. He's in college. This was a good kid by all accounts. He didn't just turn into a murderer overnight. But let's be honest, we know what this is about. We know what this is about because these are the same individuals who carry firearms and they will put you down in a fist fight. You could be unarmed and they will put you down. But they don't understand what happened with Karmelo Anthony. That they don't understand. But we know what this is about, right? Because black defense against white aggression to them is criminal. And that's the bottom line. That's what this case is about. Black defense against white aggression equals criminality. That's how they view it. That's how they view it. So please support Karmelo Anthony. I know he had a GoFundMe some months ago, maybe a year ago, and everybody, he really needs the moral support now. He needs black eyes on this case, watching, commenting, making content about it. We need to be talking about this. Letting Frisco, Texas know we're watching. We're watching. And we don't care if you get mad. Ain't nobody worrying about your threats or what you gonna do, because you're not gonna do nothing. You're not gonna do nothing. I'm a big supporter of Karmelo Anthony. I'm a big supporter of leaving us alone.
So, with this whole case, right? This whole case within a clip of it. This clip is basically framing the whole case as quote unquote black defense against white aggression equals criminality. And I want to address that directly that you just heard in this clip because it sounds like a real argument until you look at what the law actually says. Using force that is completely disproportionate to the threat you're facing is not defense under any standard, regardless of who is involved. Regardless of who is involved, the race of the people in that confrontation does not change the legal math. If the threat was a push and the response was a stab, wound to the heart, the law caused that excessive force, and it caused that for a black defendant, white defendant, any defendant, no matter the race. The standard doesn't move based on skin color, and arguing that it does while simultaneously demanding equal treatment is a contradiction that people just decided to ignore because it was inconvenient. Online, there was also a rumor spreading hard in the early days that Metcalf brothers were planning to jump Karmelo, that this wasn't just one person asking him to leave, but a coordinated attack. There's no evidence for that. None was presented, none was confirmed, and it circulated specifically because people needed a version of events that justify what happened when the facts don't fit the conclusion you already reached. The move becomes inventing new facts, and that's what that rumor was. Because according to the case and the information we know as of now, currently, that hasn't been nothing that has been proven with any evidence that the Metcalf brothers were planning to jump Karmelo. So the broader problem with filtering every criminal case through race before a single piece of evidence gets examined is that it poisons the well for every honest conversation that comes after it. When the community reflexively defends whoever shares the identity regardless of what they did, it removes accountability from the equation entirely, and that does long-term damage to the community itself and the next generation. It's unfortunate because these are two smart young men. My heart goes out to both families, because to be objective, This was Karmelo Anthony actions, not his parents. His parents didn't put him up to it. His parents wasn't there and told him to do it. And the Metcalf brothers, or in the Metcalf family, I should say, and his brother, his twin brother. My heart goes to them because now he has a brother lost, the father has a son, the mother has a son lost. So it's a lose-lose for both ends. Two young men that could have went on to thrive and been productive citizens in society and poured their value and their gifts into this country, being the next generation, right? That's a lose-lose no matter what side. And it's a lose-lose for all. For the sake of humanity, if you want to be honest. Two lives. So when you remove accountability from the equation entirely, that does long-term damage to the community itself. I was saying, right? It tells the next generation that your group membership protects you from consequences. And it doesn't. And there's the GoFundMe, right? And the loudest voices who were rallying online stopped telling their followers to donate money. They shifted to quote unquote moral support, as you heard in the clip, and keeping eyes on the case, quote unquote. When people who were fired up enough to fundraise quietly stop asking for money, that tells you exactly how confident they actually are in what's coming. Being objective. So what does all of this actually mean when you step back and look at the full picture? The truth doesn't pick a side, is my point. It doesn't care who's louder online. It doesn't care who raised more money. And it doesn't move because a group of people decided collectively that they don't like the outcome the evidence is pointing toward. What the evidence shows, in this case, is what it shows. And no amount of rallying changes that. Every person in this country deserves a fair trial. That includes Karmelo Anthony. The best thing anyone who genuinely cares about this young man, and just for the simple fact, out of respect for both families, could do is let the court process run without turning the courtroom steps into a political rally. Because outside pressure doesn't help the defendant, it poisons the jury pool and it gives the other side more ammunition. Austin Metcalf's family deserved to sit in that courtroom and have the facts heard without the process getting hijacked by people who decided what the verdict should be before opening arguments even started. Justice only works when facts lead. The moment feelings take the wheel, you don't get justice anymore. You get theater. And for those of you who are people of faith, Proverbs chapter 21, verse 3 says, and I quote, "To do what is right and just is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice." I quote, "Showing up loud is not the same as showing up for what is right." You can make all the noise in the world, post every day, fill every comment section, and still be on the wrong side of what God actually asks for, which is righteousness and honest judgment. Not loyalty to an outcome you decided before the trial started. For everyone watching, regardless of faith, the life principle here is the same. Real support for your community means holding people accountable, not shielding them from consequences. Accountability is not portrayal. Pretending someone didn't do something because they look like you is not solidarity. It's a disservice to every young person watching how adults respond to hard situations. And the young people are absolutely watching. They're watching how we decide who gets defended and why. They're watching whether the adults in their lives apply the same standard to everyone or whether the standard shifts depending on who's involved. When they see the answer is, quote, the standard shifts, they learn that fairness is negotiable, that the rule only applies to people outside the group. And that's a lesson that follows into every institution they'll ever participate in. And that's the damage that doesn't show up in a verdict, but shows up years later in how an entire generation, I should say, thinks about accountability. This case was never just about a tent in a track meet. It became a test of whether we're willing to let the facts matter more than identity. And a lot of people failed that test publicly and loudly. And the court's job now is to get it right regardless of the noise. Drop a comment with your honest take on this case. I want to know where you actually stand on it. Subscribe if you want more plain English breakdowns for stories that actually affect our communities, because these conversations aren't going nowhere. Spread that peace, love, and positivity. Let the love supersede the hate. As always, we're just having a conversation. Catch you in the next one, family. Peace.